All right, welcome to tonight's event. I would like to pass things over to Dina Morris to get us started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Tonight, you are all in for a very special treat as we discuss overcoming challenges, strategies for women's resilience. I'll introduce our moderators in a moment. They're going to conduct a panel discussion, and then we'll have time for some questions and answers. So if you think of any questions throughout the session, please be sure to put them in your Q&A box in your screen. You know, each year in March, the University of Hartford celebrates Women's History Month by honoring the incredible accomplishments of contributions of women throughout history and recognizing and supporting women each day who continue on that legacy. So all month long, we've been hosting these special virtual programs around our theme of celebrating faces of strength, faces of courage, and faces of resilience. So tonight, I am pleased to introduce our moderators for our empowering discussion. Pearl Douglas is a University of Hartford Regent, President and CEO of Canoville Consulting. And if you know Pearl, you know that she's an extraordinary woman. She's passionate about education and women's issues, evident by her community service and volunteer roles as chair of the Women's Advancement Initiative Board of Directors, board member for The Village, volunteer with United Way, and member of the Connecticut Women's Council. Prior to establishing her own consulting firm, Pearl engaged with a diverse client. She engaged with diverse client portfolio for several international finance and accounting firms. She's a certified public accountant and is currently pursuing her MBA at the University of Connecticut. And Pearl is joined tonight by Jada Hill, a sophomore student at the University of Hartford studying nursing. I'm so happy that in February, Jada published her first book of poetry, Flower Gardening by Jay Surrey, which is available on Amazon. She dedicates that book to everyone continuing to feel, to learn, and to heal. She's an ambassador for the Women's Advancement LEAP program, where she encourages others to use their voice. She served as a youth gymnastics coach. She's volunteered at NYU's Langone Hospital, and she currently helps manage the Hartford Hawks women's basketball team. I'd like to thank you both so much for moderating tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Dina, for the warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to commemorate Women's History Month. I am delighted to introduce our panelists for this discussion. Lucille M. Nickerson is Chair Emerita of the University of Hartford's Board of Regents, where she served as chair for 5 years. She is the first woman to chair the board in the institution's history. Lucille was instrumental in transitioning the Hartford College for Women legacy into the Women's Advancement Initiative, of which she became the founding chair. Lucille's professional career has centered around her roles as senior legal counsel, corporate secretary, and business executive at Aetna Inc. Following her retirement from Aetna, she managed a Connecticut nonprofit dedicated to providing elementary-age children for low-income families with scholarships to attend private or parochial schools. She is president and co-founder of Nickerson Zegarelli Consultants, LLC, which provides strategic, technical, and governance solutions to small businesses and nonprofits. Lucille earned her JD degree with honors from the University of Connecticut School of Law, and also hold a Master's of Science in Physiology from UConn. Welcome, Lucille. Then we have Maxine Robinson Lewin. She received a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting at the University of Hartford. She graduated in 2004. In 2013, Maxine began her volunteer service with the Greater Hartford branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and is currently a Silver Life member, as well as a member of Women in the NAACP. She has held numerous elected and appointed positions within the local association, as well as the Connecticut State Conference of the NAACP branches. Maxine was elected president of the Greater Hartford branch of the NAACP in 2018. She has served as the branch treasurer, secretary, and youth council advisor. Ms. Robinson Lewin serves as the third vice president of the Connecticut State Conference and served as assistant secretary of the Connecticut State Conference of the NAACP branches from 2015 to 2019. Welcome, Maxine. Gabriela Silva recently graduated from the University of Hartford's College of Arts and Sciences. She majored in economics and international studies with a concentration in global management. While at UHart, Gabby served as president of the Hispanic and Latino Student Association, as well as treasurer of the Commuter Student Association. Gabby is currently a Stein Scholar for Public Interest at Fordham University School of Law. As a lawyer, she hopes to work in immigration and criminal defense. This summer, she'll be interning at Safe Passage Project in New York City, a nonprofit organization which works to defend children in the area facing removal proceedings. Bravo, ladies, bravo. Let's jump right in. So, we all know in life that our career paths are not linear. Lucille, I'm addressing you in this first question. You've worked in various sectors, aerospace, insurance, you became a lawyer, plus your nonprofit work. Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer? What has been the motivating factor in you choosing this career?
Well, the short answer is I really didn't intend to be a lawyer at all. I started out with a degree in biology, and I was getting a master's degree in science, and I was working in a research lab. And I always think of life as having, for me, as having three basic needs. You know, the need to provide financial security for myself, to be financially self-sufficient, to continuously learn and feel challenged intellectually, and to care for other people and to give back. And my first pivot from a career perspective was driven entirely by the fact that I could not get a job that allowed me to put a roof over my head and food on my table. And so it was a very deliberate change to find something that was in a different field that at that time would allow me to have financial independence. So I went into computer programming, and that solved the financial problem for that at that time. And I learned a lot initially, but I realized after about 3 years that that was not going to be satisfying for me from a career perspective. So logically, I would have gone to medical school. I had the biology background, I had the master's degree in physiology, but I have a funny quirk. I thought before I commit to that, which was a huge commitment, maybe I should know if there's something else that I'm missing that I don't know anything about. And I realized I didn't know anything about law or being a lawyer. I really didn't. I had not been exposed to anyone. I'd never seen anybody working in that field particularly. So as sort of a pilot, and those of you who know me know I believe in pilots, I decided to keep my job and apply to the UConn night school, which they have and they still do. And that allowed me to continue to be financially independent, but to see what law was like. And it was real serendipity because I was really excited and stimulated and challenged, and I loved it. And so then I went on to a career as a lawyer, and I had a wonderful 20 or 25 years. But I realized at some point that I wasn't giving back in the way that I wanted to, and that my life wouldn't be complete if I didn't do that. So I took early retirement and have dedicated myself in the 20 or so years since then to the not-for-profit world largely, and largely also in a volunteer capacity, because I had the financial security to be able to donate my time. And I have focused primarily on education, both education at the elementary level, which is enormously gratifying, but also at the university level, and the founding of the Women's Advancement Initiative. So for those of you who are thinking that your career path will be straight, it almost certainly won't be, but keep moving forward and keep feeling good about yourself and try new things, and they work.
Thank you so much for that share, Lucille. Greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Maxine, how did you come to begin your work with the NAACP? Was it part of your plan, or did you fall into it?
Well, I'll say I fell into it. Becoming a member of the NAACP wasn't an immediate plan at the time. When I joined the Greater Hartford branch in 2013, it was a high school friend of mine who reached out to me. Because of the work that I was doing, I was the president of the parent-teacher organization at Rawson Elementary School, where my youngest child attended. And I did a lot of work with the middle school students. So they were starting to reactivate the youth council for the branch, and thought that I would be a good asset or a good person to have on a team, since I worked so closely with the young people. So after the person who was appointed to become the advisor, he was no longer able to serve in that capacity. The president at the time asked me if I would step in and help work with the young people. And I thought it was just fitting, since I already did so much volunteer work with the middle school students at Rawson. A few months after that, there was a need for a treasurer. And because, you know, I work as a financial analyst and I'm an accountant, I just thought, okay, it'll be easy. I'll just do the treasurer. So after becoming the treasurer, then there was a need for a secretary. And I'm like, you know, I was kind of hesitant, because as we go through the training for the NAACP, you know, there's always talk that the secretary is the nucleus of the branch. You know, having a bad secretary can make or break your branch. And that was just a lot of pressure on me at the time. But one of the older members who I'm very close with told me, she was like, Maxine, like, we know you'll be very great at this position. And she was like, just think about it. If you become the secretary, you can learn so much about the organization, and you'll be able to step into any role that you want to. And fast forward to 2018, I decided to run for the office of president, and she was right. I was ready and able to step into any role, and I decided to run for president. So that's pretty much how I began my work and volunteer work with the NAACP.
Wow, I love how you said yes to opportunity, and look at where it brought you. Greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, Maxine. So Gabby, you double majored in economics and international studies. Now you are attending law school to focus on public interest law. How and why did you choose this career path? Was it about passion? Was it about impact? What was it?
So I chose law school because of injustices that I had witnessed around me and my circle. You know, I had friends and family that were impacted by both the immigration and criminal justice systems. So I recognized that they were broken in different ways, and I really wanted to be a part of both fixing them and helping those that were victims of it. I also saw a career and an entire sector that wasn't represented in. So only 5% of lawyers are Latinx, and only 2% of those are Latina. So lawyers are everywhere, whether it's, you know, law firms, government, nonprofits, or corporate entities, but they aren't really representative of all people. And I really wanted to be a part of lending my voice and being representative for future generations. I think my story is a little shorter as I'm still getting there.
That's okay, but it packed a punch because we know how much representation affects, each of our lives. So thank you so much for that answer, Gabby. Next, I am really inspired so far by your shares, ladies. I hear commitment, I hear determination, I hear perseverance. Let's talk a bit about adversities. Lucille, what are some of the barriers or roadblocks you experience in shifting careers? Like, how did you overcome some of these adversities?
It's really interesting. I think some of the adversity that I felt actually goes back to when I was in school, when I was in elementary and high school. And interestingly, the culture was very much against women performing well academically, girls. I was young. And I was just actively discouraged by my classmates, by others, to want to achieve. It just wasn't considered feminine. It wasn't really considered the thing to do. And I learned, I think, back then to listen to other people and to respect their perspectives because they often pointed out something that I didn't know, but also to trust my own judgment. And I was pretty fiercely determined to get to college and to do something meaningful in my life. And so by the time I was trying to apply to law school, lots of people told me for a variety of reasons, some because I was female, but some because it was just going to be hard. It can be a rough profession, or at least that's the way those are the stereotypes. And it was just going to be too hard, and I was too old, and besides, I was a woman, and lots of people discouraged me, and I just decided I've got to try, because nothing ventured, nothing gained, the old expression. And I have learned, I think that you just have to try. I would rather try and not succeed than to not try at all. And so I said, I'm going to do this, and go working full time during the day and going to law school at night is definitely a challenge, but it was worth it. And so then by the time I got to my career, I didn't have so much a resistance to my employment. They were very good, and it was at a time when they were really actively trying to diversify. But within the organization, as I worked with people, there was resistance to having a woman on the team. And I found that the way I would overcome that was to just always be prepared and be cheerful and be value added. So their stereotype or their perception, their bias might be that they didn't want a woman. But if I showed up and I was really helpful in helping people achieve their business objectives, then they said, well, okay, maybe she's all right. and and sometimes you have to take the small triumphs. You can't change everybody's view, but you make the small triumphs, and then that person says, well, she's pretty good. And it kind of paves the way for people who come after you because there's more receptivity.
Thank you so much for that, Lucille. And that saying rings true today, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I know a lot of our attendees, this is ringing true for them as well. And especially what you mentioned about adding value, this is critical. Thank you so much for that share. Gabby, does this resonate with you at all? What were some of the earlier challenges you faced, first as a college student and now as a law school student?
Absolutely. I think that as, a woman, a Latina, and a first-generation college student, I've definitely faced a lot of similar challenges, even starting from just applying to college. And then as an undergraduate, I struggled a lot to find my voice and get involved on campus and really find a place to fit in. And it was often intimidating to speak up. I frequently felt like people knew more than I did, even though that wasn't always true. So I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. Well, I shouldn't use the past tense because that's something I continue to work on now. And I think now as a law student, the room is often filled with men, very few people of color, and many of the students come from generations of lawyers. And so it becomes really easy to feel like you don't belong and you can't succeed, or maybe that your voice doesn't matter as much. But I think it's important to remind yourself of, everything you've accomplished and how much work you've put in to be there, and that, your opinion and your knowledge is very valuable. So I found that, challenging myself to speak up when I'm uncomfortable has helped me to push past my own doubts and realize that my thoughts do contribute to the conversation and my place in the classroom is important. I also think that mentorship and, finding a support network of friends has been instrumental to me in finding my confidence. I've had student mentors and faculty mentors, both in undergraduate and in law school, that have helped me to find my place and to really speak up and feel comfortable in the room.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Thank you. That was powerful. Maxine, I can imagine you two faced many key barriers along the way, be it in your college experience or career so far. Can you share some of those with us? And could you expand on what motivated you to move forward?
So just thinking of some barriers that I faced, just more recently, as I mentioned before, I ran for president of the NAACP. And that whole experience took a toll on me mentally and physically. So we know as a woman, especially a woman of color, we always have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And during my run for president of the NAACP, there was a public perception that it was a male-dominated position. For so many years, there have been males who have held that position. There have been women who've held that position, but for most of the part, there have been men who had that position in our branch. And, despite me being the candidate that's been active for so many years on the local and state association, they felt that I was not capable of serving in this position. There were many times that I doubted myself and questioned my abilities based on, that public perception. And I believe, that apprehension is a direct result of what happens when a male-dominated society feels there's no place for women in leadership and hierarchy. We have the skills and ability to lead. We have the ability to build and direct organizations and hold leadership positions, run for political office, and we are just as qualified as our male counterparts. We are always the ones behind the scenes, making others shine and look good. For so long, I served as secretary under our previous president. So naturally, based on, encouragement from my fellow membership, I was the next person, the best person to fill that vacancy. And it was after encouragement and, just me taking a step back and looking inside myself, I realized that I was the best candidate. I was the most knowledgeable about the association, and that kind of empowered me to move forward and put my candidacy in full drive. And I must say, in the 102 years in the history of the Greater Hartford branch, that election was the largest turnout in branch history. So, the membership on the whole supported me in my run in candidacy, despite the public perception that, it was a male-dominated position and my opponent was the best person for the job because he was a male.
Well, Maxine, that left me touched and inspired. All of your answers resonated with me, and I bet many of our attendees. Thank you so much for this powerful sharing, ladies. On the topic of gender bias, and I pose this question to each of you. In your various jobs in team projects, so as a student, have you ever felt dismissed or undervalued because of your gender? How did that play out? And how would you encourage our listeners to share their voice in these situations? Any of you can go. Who wants to answer this question?
I can start. I'm sure the others have a lot to add. Yes, I think that really resonates with me. I think I would answer questions, whether it was in law school or wherever, and it was as if I hadn't said anything. People would just move on as if I hadn't uttered a word. And it's very disheartening, and it causes you to have doubts about whether you're saying anything valuable. And then sometimes you find out. I remember one class where I was called on, and I forget what even the issue was, but I said what I believed it in. And 3 hours later, had gone all the way around the circle, and the punchline was basically what I had said in the beginning, and I was so frustrated. Um, and that happens when you're in a career as well. It doesn't stop. Um, it's hard to find the silver bullet that solves that issue. I think you have to persist. I think you have to, sometimes you have to understand that the timing for your comment isn't quite right. I have found sometimes I'm a little ahead. I've kind of leapt ahead a little bit. Maybe that's because I always like to be so well prepared. I'm a sort of fanatic about being prepared. I've often thought of the professor who had that class, and he had to make that class last for 3 hours. So even if I was right, he couldn't accept the answer in the first little bit. And I mean, that's a silly thing, but sometimes there are other factors at play. And so, yes, I have been dismissed, I have felt dismissed, and I think I have genuinely been dismissed. But sometimes I try not to take offense because I realize that there are other things going on. But yes, persist, and always have confidence that what you have to say is valuable, that you bring a perspective that is different than all the male colleagues in the room or your male fellow classmates, whatever it is. And it's important for you to say it out loud and for them to hear it. And that's how we make progress.
Great advice, Lucille. Thank you so much. Talking about mentorship, and we heard Gabby talk briefly about her mentors. Maxine, how did mentors influence your life? How should students go about seeking a mentor?
Mm-hmm. So I would say for me, my mentor was my older brother, Everton. So he was kind of my biggest, outside of my parents, he was kind of like my biggest supporter, my biggest cheerleader, always pushing me to do more. And I would think because of him, you know, I am where I am career-wise. He did encourage me as well. He was one of those people who encouraged me to run as president. And I think, you know, in terms of seeking out a mentor, because I should say, let me back up. I have two mentors. So I have another mentor, Joan Gibson. She's kind of my NAACP mentor. And I would say, in seeking out a mentor, seek out someone who motivates you, someone who you can learn from, someone who's always pushing you to be better. And I think between my brother and Miss Gibson, between those two, they're always pushing me to be great. Sometimes when I don't have confidence within myself, you know, they're pushing me and letting me know that, of course, yeah, you can do that. My brother's always telling me, yeah, you can apply for that job. Like, you know, so I would say in seeking out a mentor, someone who motivates you and definitely someone who you can learn and grow from.
Well said. Thank you so much, ladies. Now we invite Jada to ask a few questions. Jada?
So firstly, thank you, Dina, for your lovely welcome. And thank you, lovely ladies on the panel. Your words are nothing less than encouraging to all of us. So my question is posed to all of you. one of the things that we learn in this life is that sometimes you have to be your strongest backbone. And so my question is, have you ever had to be your own advocate? And do you believe that that narrative should be amplified? And then on top of that, can you tell us a story where you had to reflect self-advocacy, and how did that signify your position? Any of you can answer it, so.
Shall I give it a try? I don't want to, if Gabby or Maxine want to go. Would you like to go first, one of you? Okay. I'd like to answer the story part if I could, Jada. Is that all right? Because yes, there are lots of times when you need to advocate. Some of them are quite small. I mean, it depends what what sphere you're in, and sometimes we want to make an impact on a larger level, but we don't have that scope. And so sometimes you have to work in the scope that you have. And the story I want to tell, I'll try to be quick. We were three lawyers were being dispatched to visit an insurance commissioner in the Deep South, and we were going down to request permission to do something that hadn't been done before, a new thing. And I was the junior person, as I often was on these teams, and the only female. But I was pretty well prepared, and I was pretty knowledgeable about what we wanted to do. And anyway, we went down the night before, and we had a breakfast meeting with a local lawyer who was going to introduce us to the insurance commissioner. And we went through the meeting, and he advised us on what we should do and so forth. And right at the end of the breakfast, he said, well, I think this is going to go really well, but does she have to be there? And so there was a lot of silence. And I said, well, I think I probably do, but why do you ask that? And he said, well, the insurance commissioner, and he had sort of a colorful phrase, the insurance commissioner doesn't think that women belong in business, and I'm just afraid that you won't get the result that you need if you go. So I had a dilemma because I had been sent by my company to get a job done, and I might not be able to get it done if I insisted on my role. So I tried. I thought, you know, the wheels are spinning, and I said, how about if I go, but I don't say anything? So kind of a middle ground, not a great triumph at that moment, but they said, yeah, that could probably work. So the upshot of it was I went to the meeting and I did speak, and we got the result we wanted, and it all turned out happily. But in that moment, and it wasn't, I don't consider that a major triumph. It was a small victory. But sometimes you have to remember the priorities of, you know, why you're there too. It was to achieve a business objective. But it's, yes, in various forms, in various ways. Sometimes you can have a bigger impact and make a bigger statement on behalf of yourself, but more likely on behalf of others. I always like to focus on the impact on others and not just make it about me. But that was a moment when I had to actually literally stick up for myself.
Thank you, Lucille. Gabby, did you have anything to add?
I don't think that I have, you know, a specific story of a time that I've had to advocate for myself to the same extent. But I do think that in general, women have to advocate for themselves in any career, whether that's through, you know, applying to jobs, a lot of interviews, a lot of resumes. You really have to point out, you know, how your opinion matters, why you should be in the room, and why it's really important for you to participate. And I think that, you know, I've done that in applying to internships and applying to undergraduate school and applying to law school. And I think that it's really important that we amplify these narratives, because a lot of women don't know how to advocate for themselves or don't know when they should, whether it be, you know, looking for a raise or a promotion. I think women are often scared to ask for those things, but it's really important to recognize that it's normal and okay to ask for them and how to go about those situations.
Gabby, that was a lovely response. Maxine, did you have anything to add before I move on?
I don't have a specific situation myself where I've had to advocate for myself. I'm usually advocating on the behalf of other people, but I would say, you know, for those people who can speak for themselves, I would definitely amplify them. But so many times we have so many people who aren't able to advocate and speak for themselves. So I would definitely amplify for those people who can speak up, speak for themselves.
Thank you so much, Maxine. So ladies, this next question is also posed to all of you. It's in regards to self-care and conquering your goals. And so my question is, what do you guys do to keep yourselves polished and ready for your goals? And then on top of that, what self-care advice would you give to girls that are in overwhelming situations? Anyone can answer again.
I'll jump in. I think it's really important to break up your larger goals into smaller goals and to celebrate little accomplishments. I'm a really big planner. My advisor at UHart knew that. At every meeting I was there with lots of notes and plans for each semester and timelines for law school. So I think creating realistic timelines for your goals with small milestones that you can celebrate the progress that you're making towards your bigger goals is really important. Checklists keep me very focused, and I keep a running list of things to do for today or for the month or long term. That being said, though, all of that can be very overwhelming to look at a long list of things you need to accomplish. So I think it's also important for people to take lots of breaks and time for themselves and keep doing things that they love, whether that's, you know, exercising, reading, even just watching Netflix. It's really important to set aside time to take breaks. But definitely writing down your goals to keep an image of things you have to accomplish.
Thank you, Gabby. Lucille and Maxine, do you guys have anything to attest to that?
I would have to agree with Gabby as well, in terms of writing down and keeping checklists of your goals. And I tend to do that as well. In terms of me, when I set goals, I try to usually taking training courses or keeping current with current events. If certain goals is to have certain meetings and things of that nature. In terms of self-care, that's something that I'm still working on, because having a full-time job and running a 500+ member organization can be overwhelming at times. One of the certain things that I've been trying to do a little bit better, because we're all remote, you know, we're jumping off of one Zoom meeting to the next, and there's really no time from when I end my work day until when I start having back-to-back meetings. So just scheduling that time to decompress in between, setting like a no work time range, you know, starting to like schedule lunch breaks. And I've started to like set like the do not disturb on my phone, where, you know, I don't get alerts from emails and text messages. Try to just, you know, break away from work and other activities. So it's a work in progress, but, you know, it can be overwhelming at times. And those are just some of the things that I've tried to do myself. So those were some of the things that I would recommend.
Maxine, I love that you mentioned that you're still trying to figure out the self-care aspect, because it's true. Sometimes it changes. You might have it figured out now, and then tomorrow you'll need a different method. And that's me every day. And I'm sure a lot of the people in attendance now feel the same exact way. So thank you for that. Lucille, do you want to add?
I would just add to what Gabby and Maxine have said, and maybe say it just slightly differently. Time management is your friend. And I was not good at it in college at all. And I think it was when I was working full time and going to law school that I really learned the value of 15 or 20 minutes. And I learned that, I mean, at one time I wouldn't have even started something if I only had 20 minutes to work on it. But I realized that I could get an awful lot done in a really short amount of time if I really set. So if I were going to I had a big study for a test, I would allow myself 2 hours or 3 hours, and you can get a lot more done if you set those time parameters as opposed to saying I'm going to study till I'm done. And I played those kind of games with myself, and I still do, and it is still a work in progress, Maxine. I'm sorry, it's been so many years for me, and I'm still working on it. But time management is definitely important, and for those of you who are learning it now through the LEAD program or otherwise, hooray, because it is, I think, absolutely critical.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucille, for that lovely response. And thank you all you ladies for your responses. They were very meaningful and encouraging, as I said before. Pearl, do you have anything to say for all of us?
I just want to thank you, ladies, for this empowering discussion. Goosebumps. Thank you so much. We have come to the Q&A portion of our event. Jada, has any questions popped up for our panelists?
One question, let me get it up. So one of the questions by Monica was, if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Great question. Can we hear from you first, Lucille?
Be open to new things. There are always new things to explore and always be looking for what you don't know. We all know what we know, and but sometimes there are things that are really unfamiliar that we just haven't been exposed to, or people or differences, cultural differences. Otherwise, always listen to others and be open to learning new things and trying new things.
Awesome. Do we have another question, Jada?
Yes, we do. So Sydney asks, for those of you that have families and started them during your career journeys, how did you balance home and work life?
Maxine, you want to take this one?
I will take this one. So, so I had my first child when I was 18 years old. I was actually a senior in high school, and I had my second child shortly after graduating University of Hartford. And for me, I had a great support system, my parents and my now husband. Throughout college and throughout me starting my career, you know, my husband and my family were a great support system. I would say though, it was challenging, you know, to be so young, and, you know, I was working full time and going to school full time, but, you know, just having that great support system, I think that was, you know, that was helpful to me. In terms of, I can't really speak too much in terms of having a career and because my kids were probably, 5 or 6 or so when I graduated and started my career. But I just think that just having that great support system and just trying to balance, that work life, because one of the things that I found myself was, just coming out of college and starting in a career in, as you can attest to, Pearl, starting in a career in accounting, you're working, a lot of hours. And it was just, for me, it was just work. And it wasn't until, a little bit later in life, I had a greater appreciation for family time and time with the kids and things of that nature. So I think just having just a better hold on that work-life balance early on.
Thank you, Maxine. One of the questions earlier out was, as a woman, what is one of the challenges that you face in your occupation?
Well, I was often one of the only women in the room, whether we were doing an acquisition and it was a negotiating team. It wasn't uncommon. And it presents a lot of challenges, in part because you often aren't taken seriously. But actually, you can turn that to your advantage, because by the time they realize you've already figured them out, they they have to accept that you're good at negotiating or whatever it is. And sometimes you take people by surprise because they're not expecting that the girl in the room will be good. So I struggled with that, but I think I managed it. I tried to manage it reasonably well, but it can be intimidating.
Thank you for sharing that, Lucille. Do we have any other questions, Jada?
Yes, we do. Amy asks, who inspires you? And yeah, who was a role model in your life who inspires you?
Gabby, you want to start?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think I often look at women who are in powerful positions or who have made it very far. So Justice Ginsburg, Justice Sotomayor, AOC, Vice President Harris have all been big role models for me. I think especially when we're talking about, being in the room and having to deal with being the only female and male classmates or coworkers talking over you. I think Vice President Harris inspired us all when she told Mike Pence that she was speaking, and has really taught me to try and also set verbal boundaries in the same way.
Thank you, Gabby. Someone actually asked, how do you respond when a male coworker says something that makes you uncomfortable? So
I think that is a situation when we would take a note from Vice President Harris. At the same time, you could mention, I didn't appreciate that joke. Don't say it again. Or I think if you feel uncomfortable in the situation, there's always someone that you can turn to, whether it's a mentor or another coworker, to eventually have that conversation, even if in the moment you don't feel that you can speak up for yourself yet.
thank you, Gabby. Another question that we have from Monica is, what are some ways that I can take care of my support system?
My support system came in different ways. Certainly in the workplace, you need to be considerate of your team members. You need not expect more of them than you're willing to give yourself. And you can have very high standards, but you must always demonstrate that you're holding yourself to the same standards that you have for others. And B, I always thought it was important to respect everyone and to be generous and kind and respectful and cheerful. Cheerful goes a long way. Sometimes even if you get back what you give is something I always like to say. And so if I project cheerfulness, even if I don't really feel particularly cheerful that day, I will get more cheer back than if I kind of emote negatively, in which case other people emote negatively. So it's a kind of a virtuous circle. And I have found that, but I have found particularly kindness, respect, caring makes a huge difference, both in the workplace, but certainly in your personal life as well.
Thank you, Lucille. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A box, but I have a question of my own. So do you ladies have a favorite quote that fuels your integrity?
I'll start off, and actually, this quote I always include it in my bio. So it's from Marcus Garvey. There's a great deal of work to do, and it calls for sacrifice and determination on the part of those who are leading. And if men believe that money should be the only consideration for leadership, then there can be no successful achievement.
Thank you, Maxine. I love that. Lucille and Gabby, do you guys have a quote for me?
So Justice Ginsburg was asked when she thought there would be enough female justices on the Supreme Court. And she said, when there are 9. There are only 9 seats on the Supreme Court, for those that don't know. So anytime that I think about, having to face challenges based on being a woman and different biases, I think about Justice Ginsburg and that we need to be there. We need to have a place in the room.
Wait, Gabby. Lucille, do you have anything to add?
I have a quick story, and some of you probably have heard it. It's not really a quote, but it's meaningful to me. It's about the little girl who goes with her mother to the seashore, and they're walking along the beach, and all these starfish have been washed up on the sand by the tide as the tide went out, and there's literally hundreds of them, and they're all going to die. And the little girl says to her mother, "Oh, Mommy, we've got to help the starfish." And her mother says, "No, there are too many. We can't do it all. There's just way too many." And the little girl starts picking the starfish up and throwing them back one at a time. And she says, "But I can help this one and this one and this one." And I try to remember that because it's important, even if the scope of our efforts are small, if we each do our part, however small it is, it adds up and it accumulates and it matters. So I would say don't wait to do necessarily the grand thing that we might all want to do, but do the small things because they're the things you can do every day, every hour, and they add up, they accumulate, and they make a difference.
Thank you, Lucille. I do see another question by Taylor. She asks, what advice would you give to a soon-to-be graduate?
So I went straight from undergraduate into law school, so I'm not sure that I have too much advice for someone entering the workforce. But I think it's important to really take advantages of the connections that UHeart can give you, whether it's talking to professors or attending different networking events. I met a few mentors from different events at UHeart and was connected to people through my advisor or other students around me. So I think it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the questions, attendees, and thank you for your answers, our panelists, and thank you so much for the quotes. I think very impactful way to end our evening. So this concludes the end of our discussion. I cannot thank you enough for your participation. Thank you so much.
I just like to say, how fast does an hour go when you have remarkable women in the room, taking up space and supporting each other. So thank you so much to our panelists, Lucille Nickerson and Gabby Silva, and also to Maxine Robinson-Lewin, who is recently appointed to the President's Community Advisory Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We thank our moderators, Pearl Douglas and Jada Hill, for guiding our discussion. And I also personally like to thank our planning committee for their hard work throughout the whole month of March and planning these virtual events. In March around the world, we celebrate Women's History Month, but as you know, every day we have grit and resilience, and we are making a real difference and impact in our world. So thank you all for watching. We appreciate you. We want you to continue to stay connected to your supportive community, and remember to give yourself to engage time and permission to engage in some self-care. And most importantly, keep moving forward with strength, courage, and kindness. We do have some upcoming events. We'd like you all to join us if you can. This Thursday at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a discussion about COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy with Suzette DeBeethan-Brown, the mayor of Bloomfield, as the moderator, joined by Dr. Reginald Eady, co-chair of the Connecticut COVID-19 Vaccine Advisory Group, and Dr. Gary Roll, who is an internal medicine physician and public health practitioner. So that's 1 o'clock on Thursday. And also on Thursday at 5 p.m., the Women's Advancement Initiative is hosting their annual symposium. It will be a virtual video presentation of innovative research and creative projects from our students and faculty members. So thank you all for joining us so much. We hope to see you again soon. Please continue to stay well and keep empowering each other. Have a good night, everyone.